Welcome back to our Readers YouTube channel. In today's class, we'll learn how to make this beautiful notched collar double-breasted blazer jacket. It's a very simple tutorial and it's beginner friendly. If this is something you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so for this dress, I have drafted my basic bodies already. It has this processed dart line, and also it's a lapel. It's a double-breasted jacket, which means it has overlap. So I have this 4 inches overlap allowance before I drafted. So now from my center front, I measured 4 inches, as you can see, and then I ruled it straight before I drafted my basic bodies. So now let's quickly go straight to the tutorial. So the first thing I'm going to do is to determine the depth of my neckline. So for my neckline depth, I'm going to be measuring it on this actual neckline measurement. So for me, that's around 7 inches. So I'm going to make 7 inches mark there for the depth of my neckline. Then I'm going to connect it to my neck point like that. So after doing that, the next thing is to determine the breaking point of your lapel. Okay, so now for the lapel, the breaking point is where that fold over that you have for your lapel stops. So you can stop it around your chest area, your bust points, or your under bust, anywhere you want it to be. But for me, I'm just measuring around 13 to 14 inches, and that's going to be my breaking point. So I'll connect that to enter into my lapel allowance, and then I'm going to connect that as well to my neck point, to my neck depth, which is this. Okay, so now that I have this, the next thing, so I'm going to extend this neckline. Remember, this is my actual natural neckline. I'm going to extend this neckline by 2 inches from my lapel, and you can just rule it with a pencil because I'm still going to alter this. This is not the actual design that I'm going for. So after connecting like that, on that point I'm going to go upwards by 2 inches, okay, which is what I'm going to be connecting to my lapel. So I'll reconnect that to my center front, and then from there I'm going to connect from this point all the way to my breaking point using my curved ruler. So I have my curved ruler like that, and then from that point, if you want your lapel to extend more, you can use 2.5 inches, 3 inches, but 2 inches is okay for me. So from there now, I'm going to connect them together for this shape that I want. Okay, so the lapel is taken care of now. This is what the lapel looks like. The next thing is for us to create the collar. Remember, this is a notched collar dress. So for the collar, I'm going to bring in my back neckline here because the collar is going to go through the back neckline. So we are going to make that extension on our front. So to know how long you need, you're going to measure the neckline that you have at your back. So this is around 3.5 inches with one bar for me. Okay, so that point I'm folding it on my tape so that I can remember it. So now I'm going to set aside my back, and then I'm going to open up the excess that I folded for my front to check if it's up to what I need. Okay, so I think it's 3.5 inches, and I still have a bar to go. So I'm just going to join a little paper on top of this. So I've added the paper now. So the next thing for me to measure that 3.5 from where my shoulder stops here on the front. So I'm just going to extend it like this. Okay, so after extending it, I'm going to connect it like this. Okay, so you can just connect it in a straight form, and then I'm going to go ahead and add like 1/2 inch to it, so that's going to give me a bit curvy effect because the neck is not actually straight. So with my slightly curved ruler, I'm going to link it back to my neckline so that I can have like a smooth transition like what I have there. So from there now, I'm going to measure how wide my collar is going to be. So I'm going to working with around 3.5 inches for the width of my collar, and then I'm going to connect that as well. So after connecting, this is what I have. The next thing is to determine where I'm going to connect it to here. So to get that now, I'm going to be using my angle 45 degree. You can see the V that we have on our ruler here. So you place the center point on this center line here, which is your center front and the extension, the original extension that you made. So once the center point is there like this, it will guide you on how to draw your angle 45. So now this is where it is. So again, just like I used 2 inches for this, I'm going to be using 2 inches for my extension here also. So from here I'm going to connect it and then stop where I have 2 inches, which is here. Okay, so now this is my notched effect. So you can decide to make it bigger than this, you can decide to make it wider than this. In fact, you can follow this first line as against going up by half an inch. It all depends on how you want it to look like by the time you are through with your drafting. So the next thing is to connect from here to this lower point. So I'm going to connect it again using the slightly curved part of my ruler like this, and our collar is ready. So you can label this part collar. So now I'm through with drafting this, but because this has like it has pleatings at the hem, so I'm just going to create that side line on the hem of the clothes before I cut the full outfit out. So for the style that we have there, I'm going to be using my dot line here as my reference point. So the dot line is going to be straight, but from here now we are going to be replacing that side with pleats. So it depends on, you can have it straight or you can have it curved like I'm going to have mine. This is my hip line and this is my waistline. Okay, so now from my hip line, I think I'm just going to be going upwards by 5 inches. You can just measure from your waist line. This is totally up to you and the design you want to achieve, or you can just go up by 4 inches here, and then here, remember I said the design is going to stop around here. So here on my hip line, I can just go upwards by 2 inches, and then I'm going to connect to have like a slight V shape there. Okay, so you can see what I have there. So for in your case, you can just make it straight or you can do whatever it is that you want, but I just want it to be a little V shape there, and then I'm going to cut it out. So now for my back panel as well, remember I've already drafted my back panel. So for the back, I don't want the back to be V shape, I'm just going to leave the back straight. So from my hip line from the front, remember I went up by 4 inches. So here on the back, from my hip line, I'm going to go up by 4 inches, and then I'm going to measure the same 4 inches here and make it into a straight line. So for the V, for the back, it's going to be completely pleated, while the V shape is just going to be in front, because that is what I want. So you can go with whatever it is that you want. Okay, so now all of this now will be replaced with pleatings. So let's just cut it out before I explain how I'm going to do this. So to cut it, I'm just going to bring in my paper scissors. Okay, so now I've cut it out now. So I'm just going to cut the 4 inches above my hip line now, and then I'm going to set it aside. So now this is my back, and this is the one that I'm going to be replacing with pleats. And then for the front as well, I've cut it out from the leftover fabric. So the first one I'm going to be cutting out is my collar. So to cut my collar, I'm just going to follow the shape that I created for the collar, and then I'm going to cut it on the notched part, and then I'm going to cut out my neckline. Okay, so this is the collar. The next thing is to cut out my lapel. I'm going to cut out the lapel as well on the line that I created, and this is what it's going to look like. So this is what I meant by breaking point. That's where your lapel is going to stop, and this is our collar that we're going to be fixing to this. So you can see it's a notch collar. So this is where the notch effect that you are going to have is going to be. So now the next thing is to cut out the design. So the design that I'm going to be replacing, remember I said it's not going to get to my dart line for the front, so it's going to go like this, and then from here I'm going to connect it like this. I'll cut into my dart allowance. Okay, so I'm going to be replacing this part as well with pleats. So now for the front, this is what I'm going to be replacing. For the front, it's just like half of the front, but in the case of the back, I'm going to be replacing everything. So now I'm going to join this dart allowance now, and then you can either use slash and spread to create it, or you can just measure what you have here and multiply it by 3 and cut it out so that I can create pleats to replace this. So we can, I think I'm just going to multiply by 3, then I'll show us how I'm going to shape it to fit into the shape that I have here. So assuming you do not have any shape here and you just go straight, then you don't need to shape it. But because I have this V shape and I want it to remain like this, so by the time I cut it out, I'm just going to shape it to conform with what I have here. So now I'm going to cut out the dart. So that I can sew them together. But in the case of the back panel, I'm not cutting the dart out because it's just a regular dart. So I'm just going to take the dart directly on my bodice like that. So I'm going to go over to my table now and cut this on my fabric. So after cutting it on my fabric, I'll bring it back to show us what we have. So I'm going to cut 2 of this for the 2 sides of the front, 2 of this for the 2 sides of the back. Then I'm going to cut another 2 of this for the facing. Remember, we are going to be adding a facing to this. So if you're going to be lining it fully, then you cut 2 of this again. So it means you're going to cut 4 of this, 4 of this if you are lining it fully. Because I'm not lining it fully, I'll cut 2 of this, then I'll cut 4 of this for just the facing. And for the back, I'm going to cut 2 of this. I'll hold my dart like I said. I'll cut 2 of this for the 2 sides of the back, and then I'm going to remove the allowance. Remember, there's not going to be any seam on the pleat line, so you can just cut out your seam allowance. You need the seam allowance to join the front and back together in this case, but because this part you are going to be replacing it with pleats, and you are not going to sew them together, it's just going to be continuous from the front to the back, so I don't need side seam allowance for that. So now after removing the seam allowance, I can just gum the front and back together. Then I'm going to measure what I have here, multiply it by 3 so that I can add full nails for pleating, and then I'm going to cut that out as well. So I hope we understand that. So I'm just using my tape to fuse them together so that I'm not going to lose it, because I'm still going to use it to shape. So now measuring, now I have around 15 inches, and remember, this is just for one side of the front and back. There's still other side. So now if you are adding the other side, that's going to give you around 30 inches. So multiplying 30 inches by 3 is going to give me 90 inches. So I'll cut a fabric of 90 inches width, and then the length is going to be the full length here, which is around 11.5 inches. So I'll add 1 inch allowance for seam. For hemming, I'll also add the 1 inch allowance to the hem of this front part as well. So I'll go over and cut it now, and then we'll bring it back to show us how we're going to sew it. So I'm going to cut it on my fabric now. This is the back, it's cut on fold, and then I added allowances where necessary. So this is the front, this is the first side of the front, and like I said, I'm cutting the facing together with it. So I cut out 4 pieces, 2 for my main fabric and 2 for facing, and this is the other side of the front. Then I cut out 2 pieces for this, okay, and this is the collar. So I cut 4 of the collar because I'm going to join it together here to form one collar, and one is going to serve as the lining and the main fabric. So now I'll go ahead now and add my interfacing to the collar and also to my facing. After adding the interfacing, we'll start to sew them together. So I've fused the interfacing to it now. This is the facing for the 2, and then I added it also to the lining for my collar. So now the next thing is to sew in your dart. I'm going to sew the princess dart for the front, put the lining, and then I decided to cut my lining in truth for the front. So I'm going to sew it together for both the lining and the main fabric, and also for my collar I'm going to sew it together at the center back here. So I'm going to sew it there now, and then I'll also do the same thing for the lining before I turn it out. So I'll go ahead and sew all of it. I also hold my dart at the back as well. Okay, so I'm going to join the princess dart line, as you can see. So after joining the princess dart line, I took my dart for the back as well, and then I joined it together on the shoulder and also on the side seam. So this is the front. You can see this is where we're going to be adding the pleats to, and this is what the back looks like now. So this is my dart for the back, and I also pressed it down. So for my facing for the front and back also, I cut out a facing for the front facing is actually a full facing for both sides, but the back I just cut it into up to like the waist area. So I've joined it on the shoulder. I'm also going to join it on the side. So that is the lining. So for my collar, I wanted to place them against each other after joining them on the center back, and then I sew it and turn. So now I'll take it to the sewing machine now, to the ironing table, and give it a good press so that I can relax well. So after ironing it now, I'm going to bring in my bodice, and then I'll notch the center back by just folding it, and I'll place a notch there to guide me. So after notching it like that, I'm going to match my the center back of my collar against it, and then I'm going to sew it all the way to the front like this on both sides before I use my lining to cover it. Okay, so I've gone ahead to sew it to it. You can see that I've pressed it and it's now flat. So I sew it around the neckline. I notched my center point and I matched it with the center of my collar. So this is what the collar looks like now. This is what the blazer is looking like. So now I'm going to bring in my lining, and then I'm just going to match it up with it like this. You can notch the center point of your lining as well, and then I'm going to place it against each other, making sure that my collar is in between the lining and the main fabric, and then I'm going to pin it down. Okay, I'll pin it down, and then I'll pin it to the front. So this is going to help me conceal all of these rough edges. You match your shoulder points together as well, and then you match it up to your lapel point, which is here, and then I'm going to sew it all the way to the hem. Okay, so I'll do the same thing for the other side as well. So I'll sew it all the way to the hemline, and then I'll match it for the other side and sew as well before turning it for ironing. Okay, so I've suspended the collar inwards, you can see, and then I've sewn it around the collar and also all the way to my hem. So when I get to the hemline, I just sew it here so that I can neatly close it. Remember, we're going to add our pleating to it, and I've turned the pleating already, so I want the hem of this to also be neatly finished. So this is what it looks like, and I did the same thing for the other side. I just sew it all the way to the center front where I'm going to fix my buttons, and then I also sew it close on the hem so that I can turn it out. So I'm going to notch all the curve areas now, turn it out, and then this, when I turn it out, this is what it's going to look like. Everything is going to be clean. Okay, so you can see the neckline. This is the outer part and this is the inner part. You can see how clean it is. I'll turn everything out now and then go over to the ironing table to iron it. Okay, so I've gone ahead to iron it, and this is what it looks like. So the last thing now is to put our pleated fabric underneath. So just like I explained, I went ahead to cut my long fabric, and then I have pleated it and ironed it. So you can see what I have here, and I've also gone ahead to hem the lower part of the pleat. So this is what it looks like. So now to shape it, because of the V shape that we did for the front, I'm going to, remember I said it's not going to have any seam, so it's running from the front all the way to the back. So I'm going to put it on fold now. These are the two front sides, and then I'm just going to lay it down, arrange the pleats well, and then you can just bring in your pattern and place it to shape it, or you can just place your already made dress on it and then use it to shape it down like this. Okay, at the center front, so that it can follow the shape that you created. So you match the hemlines together now, and then I'm just going to chalk it down before I sew, before I cut it out. So this is my chalk. I'm just going to mark it down like this, then I'll remove it, and then I'll add my seam allowance for joining before cutting it, so that I don't lose my pleat. I'm just going to hold the pleated part with pins before I go ahead and sew it down. Okay, I hope you understand that. And then you must have already measured and confirmed that what you pleated to this to is your exact measurement. So I've confirmed that is the exact measurement that I need round. So now after cutting it out like this, you can see now that I have this V shape. I'm going to go ahead now and sew it. So I'll sew this to this and then sew this all round from my front all the way to the back. Remember the back is straight, so I'll sew the back as well and then back to the other front. Okay, so now I've sewn it to it. As you can see, I used the contrasting color of fabric so that we can see the V shape that we have here. Like I said, you can have it straight, but I just like it V like this. It's a short dress, so this is our lapel. You can see the breaking points here and it's overlapping on each other just like we drafted it. This is the collar and this is what the back looks like. The back is actually straight. Okay, so the back is straight while the design is only at the front area. So now the dress is almost ready. The last thing to do now is to fix the sleeve of your dress. I will take it to the mannequin to see what it looks like. This is what the blazer dress looks like. This is the full view. I've added my sleeve to it and I just placed this trimming to beautify it. So this is the notched collar part, just like we drafted it. You can see how lovely it came out, and this is the double-breasted part. So I just use my pin to hold the buttons there. So you need to make your buttons and your button holes, and this is where we have our pleated design. So it just goes all the way to the back, and I use this contrasting color of fabric so that we can see it better. So this is what the full view of the blazer dress looks like. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.